Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Other Canada podcast. I am your host, Owen Osinde, and today we're joined by Akilah Newton on the show. Akilah is an entrepreneur and activist, founder and executive director of Overture of the Arts, and also the founder of Big Dreamers, which is shifting the narrative of Black history and the impact that it's had on Canada. In this episode, you're going to learn more about her history in getting into the arts, launching her not-for-profit, and also starting her publishing company. You do not want to miss out on this. And lastly, we want to give a big shout out to BDC for making this podcast happen. We could not have done it without you. So tune in and enjoy this conversation. Today, we are joined by Akilah Newton. She is an entrepreneur, an activist, and the founder and executive director of Overture with the Arts, and also Big Dreamers, which is a publishing company, which is a place to really change the narrative around Black history. And today we're going to get deeper into this conversation about her history in the arts, writing Big Dreamers, and everything that comes with that whole publishing company to really change the conversation. But without further ado, Akilah, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me. I'm
Absolutely.
excited.
This is a pleasure. You know, I had the chance to really watch some of your TV interviews and, see the passion you have for what you do. Before getting there, though, I know you're big into the arts. And, for the audience that doesn't know about you, what led you to, becoming, what led you to be in the art space early on?
Yeah.
And what really started that passion for you?
I mean, as a young kid, I always was, watching musical theater and movies, or always singing, dancing at home. I mean, as a kid, my favorite movie was Annie. I just loved the concept of singing and dancing and having that be a career. I was just always really I was just really interested in that because I just didn't understand how people did that as a living. So my parents always put me in dance, they put me in theater, they put me in piano lessons, and I just really excelled in the arts, and I loved it. So I really enjoyed all those extracurricular activities that were arts-based. And I wasn't that kid that was good in math and science. I didn't wear that hat.
You're a creative person.
I really, really am. And it was only when I was older that I realized that, okay, no, I'm really creative. The arts is like the route that I should be taking. But I just really enjoyed it so much, so I always wanted to pursue it further. Yeah. So when I got a little bit older and I went to CEGEP, I explored it even more, taking musical theater, taking radio classes, TV production. I absolutely loved it.
Just loved it, yeah.
Yeah, and then I started taking internships. I did an internship at a record label. I did an internship at a radio station. I really wanted to be involved in that industry, in arts and entertainment. I just loved everything about it. So then after CEGEP, I basically found a university in Liverpool called the Liverpool Institute for Performing Arts, so in the UK. And I applied, and I lived there for 3 years and got my bachelor's degree in entertainment management. And again, it felt like, the TV show Fame from the 80s?
Of course.
It was literally like the UK version of the Fame School.
Yeah.
You'd be in the cafeteria, you'd see kids doing dance moves. You'd be in libraries, you'd see actors running scenes. Yep. And honestly, everything about that experience is what basically inspired me to, pursue this long-term career in the arts. So I was in Liverpool from 2003, 2006, and upon graduation, I decided to move back to Montreal. I was actually working on an arts organization. I won't say the name because I'm not trying to throw them under the bus. But essentially, they were running all these commercials on the radio saying, do you want to be the next Disney star? If so, come to this audition. They'd have this huge cattle call and invite hundreds of families to come out, hoping that their kid would be the next big star. So anyhow, it turned out to be a bit of a scam where they'd have auditions, but the kids weren't auditioning for any actual part. They were trying to sell them classes. So I worked there for a while. The classes were ridiculously overpriced. For a 10-week session of classes was $1,900. And when I say 10 weeks, that's 1 hour a week. So it was $190 for 1 hour.
So each session is $190.
$190. So you get 10 sessions total, $1,900.
And what are they teaching you in these classes?
So they're teaching you how to prepare for auditions. They're teaching you scenes and how to work with an acting partner. They're teaching you how to do monologues. So I'm not saying that they weren't actually offering classes. They were. but for what they were charging, it just didn't make sense. So that just didn't sit well with me. So I actually have a twin brother who's a professional actor. So I just had a conversation with him one day. I was like, you know what, if I started something, would you be able to reach out to your actor friends and have them come teach at my programs? So a light bulb went off in my head, and I decided, you know what, like, I want to do something that's, you know, revolving around the arts, that's also focusing on the community and working with youth, but I want it to be accessible to all. So when the light bulb went off, I decided that I was going to start my own nonprofit organization, and that's where Overture with the Arts comes into play. Because I wanted to offer high-quality programs that were basically, you know, free or very low cost, and have established artists working with these kids to mentor them and give them the skills that they need and help them, you know, achieve their dreams, and they're not bankrupting their parents.
Exactly. Do you feel like when you're looking at that program that was charging like more than $100 per session?
Yeah.
Was it the fact that it was the pricing offer that got you inspired to do something? Or is it more of like the curriculum that they had that was like, you know what, I can do this better even though they're charging a different price?
Well, to be honest, it was a bit of both. The price was absurd.
Yep.
The activities and the workshops that they were doing, I'm like, yeah, they're good, but yes, I can definitely, you know, enhance what they're doing. But then also it was just very superficial. It was all about how you looked and how you presented yourself. And yes, I understand that the entertainment industry is superficial as well.
Of course.
But at the same time, you need to have a skill set. You can't just show up and look pretty on camera and stand there and start stuttering and not perform. You have to be able to deliver. So I wanted to, you know, really focus on the actual performance aspect and really bettering your skills as a performer.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can imagine being that if they're offering that, they're not actually selling the kids that, they're selling the parents.
Exactly.
Right? And the parents are like, you know what, I want my child to be a star. I want them to be in the arts.
Exactly.
And, there's this stigma where a higher tier price is deemed like it's actually a better offering.
Which it's not
Which never
always.
seems like the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
When you start Overture with the Arts, and this is where things get interesting, is people don't know how to start nonprofits. Right? It's easy to start a business, which is like it's a capital intensive business, but starting a nonprofit, how do you go setting that up to really start executing on your vision?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, because I did not have a background at all in the nonprofit or charity sector. Although I had my bachelor's in entertainment management, and there were business classes and finance classes, I did understand more or less how to structure it, but I never ran a business. I always worked for someone. But it was just one of those things where I don't know where I got this false sense of hope, but I was like, it's okay, I could do this. And honestly, it was just one of those things where, like, each year I would just build upon programs. I would see the growth, and it would just kind of snowball. But honestly, I just started going to networking events, meeting with people who were doing, you know, similar things in the community, or not even similar, but people working in the nonprofit or charity sector. And in the end, I ended up getting a mentor who helped guide me. So that was a huge part of the growth of my organization. But honestly, it's one of those things where it's like, you just got to believe in yourself, and not to sound cheesy, but just do it. It's really that simple.
You know, it's actually really cool when you have a vision and you actually feel compelled to do something and you believe what you're doing is right. Somehow, like, the universe just conspires to, like, really piece everything together and to bring that vision into reality.
Absolutely. But I mean, people thought I was crazy. They literally were like, wait, they're like, you're leaving a paying job to start a not-for-profit. Like, they were literally just like, so what are your long-term plans? I'm like, this is my plan. Yeah. And they, like, you know, when people are just like, okay, that's cute.
It's like, you look at them, they're smiling, they're excited, like, oh my God, good for you. Yeah. But you can see them, they don't really believe that you can pull it off. They're like, okay, go try it.
Yeah.
But I know you're going to come back and you're going to, like, probably go back to your regular life. Yeah.
I had so many people be like, oh, what a great hobby.
Like, a hobby.
I swear to you.
That's insulting.
It's insulting. I'm like, oh, it's a hobby?
Yeah.
Cool. Let me prove you wrong. 13 years later, we've won 2 awards. We've had over 50,000 kids in our programs.
Amazing.
Brought in over, $1 million in funding. So, yeah, it's a really fun hobby, actually.
It's eggs in their faces.
Literally.
Scrambled, like, pretty much.
Yeah, I'm the type of person, if you tell me I can't do something, I'm like, yeah, watch me do it.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that chip on your shoulder, and you have definitely made it happen. What year was this, by the way, like when you actually launched Overture of the Arts? Yeah,
so I founded the organization in 2009. It was April 23rd, 2009.
2009.
Yeah.
So from then till now, in your opinion, how has your programming evolved?
So it's evolved in a sense where originally I was like, okay, my program is just for underserved kids, people who are in communities where they, don't really have the same type of, I guess, financial benefits as other kids. But what was interesting is even though we had, the teachers that were, high quality and whatnot, people were questioning, what do you mean it's free? Yeah. It was weird because I'm like, no, we have the established artists. We've got these great activities, but people just for some reason, when they equate free to programming, they don't think it's going to be any good quality. So what we did over time is we just opened it up to anyone because, yes, obviously people from underserved communities will benefit from these programs, but there are kids who will come from wealth whose parents ignore them and they don't have that sense of belonging. So we really wanted to just create a really safe community and space for kids to come, regardless of their social economic background, come create and just feel that sense of belonging, basically.
Yeah, amazing. It's great to see that the organizations were willing to give these premium services, especially acting and getting into arts and producing. It takes a lot of time, and to be really, really good at it, it takes, you need to have some patience with it. And how are you attracting kids and these children from these low economic backgrounds to join the program? What was your outreach process like?
So the outreach was originally we were working with schools that would basically tell us okay, we do have a population where the families do have lower incomes. We would do extracurricular activities at those schools. So we come in, we do after-school programs. We'd even do programs during the day where kids would get credit. So I think through that's what really introduced our program to a lot of kids. And then we would also collaborate with other organizations and offer arts programs to them, even though they weren't arts organizations. And just from that, we would build and build. But it's still really hard to try and target, that segment of the population because, I love the arts. The arts is obviously very popular. However, a lot of kids don't have that confidence to go into the arts. Yeah. And it's also an industry where there's so much rejection and so much uncertainty that it's not the type of career where most kids are going to be I'm going to be an actor. No matter what, that's my career because with all the rejection that they're facing, it's not a stable career to have. So we're just, trying to tell kids yes, it's possible to have this career. However, you need to have your backup plans because we do place an emphasis on, the importance of education as well. It's
Absolutely.
Do your dance classes, do your music classes, do as much as your heart desires, but you need that bachelor's degree to fall back on. And, you also need another part-time job so you can sustain yourself while you're going out for these auditions.
Absolutely. It's amazing you're actually putting the realities of this industry. It's very cutthroat.
It is.
Of course, I'm in the media side of it, so I'm not in the actual talent side of it, but I do have some friends who are in the talent side of it. It's ruthless. And you can look at them, you look at their portfolio, you look at their shoots, the videos they've been a part of, and you're like, wow, you're super talented. And a part of it, too, is politics that play into it.
I know, that's
getting roles, getting opportunities. It's who you know.
Yep.
You could be the best of the best.
Yep.
But if you don't know or someone who works in that organization, you don't really have a fighting chance, or if you don't have a great agent,
exactly.
These are deeper things we can get into. In terms of the kids that you have assisted so far, have any of them ever graduated from your program and have actually went on to do some great productions with certain companies or the big part of you know what I mean?
I wouldn't say there's any kids, let's say, that will say, oh, they're starring on that TV show. But for example, we had one girl who's in our music program. We had a program called Girls Unite where teenage girls would get to write their own original songs, go to the recording studio, record a music video, and do little vlogs. So I had a girl in that program who then went on and wrote original song and applied for funding through Factor. So we guided her through that process, and then she ended up getting a $2,000 grant. So that was helping her along her journey. We had another girl who was in one of our songwriting programs, and we had a songwriting competition. And the first year of the competition, the girl who won, she actually went on, and then 2 years later, she won this big TV songwriting competition. There was a talent competition.
That's unreal.
Yeah, and she won a $10,000 prize. So that's really exciting. So we have seen kids really reaching for their dreams. Yeah. And we hope to see more of that, obviously.
Absolutely. And we can't leave your brother Amari out of this.
Of course.
Right? He's your twin brother, right?
Yes, my twin.
How's it been working with your bro?
Well, I guess the good thing is because I'm the founder, I just tell him what to do.
You tell him, do this, do that, and he just follows along with it?
Exactly. Yeah, but, it is nice because, I've always worked behind the scenes in the industry where he's been more in the forefront. So it's been good to collaborate in the sense that, like, he'll refer some of his friends and colleagues to come teach our programs.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll do interviews together all the time. So it's one of those things where it's like the yin and the yang, so it works well together. But I mean, I've seen over the years how hard it's been for him. Like, you know, there were years where he was only booking 1 or 2 gigs a year. And, you know, over time, now he's like a sought-after voice actor for cartoons. He actually plays the voice of Black Panther for a Marvel cartoon.
No way.
Yeah, so it's like I've seen his struggle for 20-plus years. So it's really beautiful to see that, you know, he stuck with it. And, like, now he's an accomplished actor. But it's been nice working with him.
Yeah, there's actually a story I was reading. It's one of my favorite books, actually. It's called Think and Grow Rich. And there's a chapter on persistence in it. And he talks about this one actor. Her name is Annie Hurst.
Okay.
And how she had been trying to break down her, you know, the walls to really get into a major production and to become a big-time actor. And the thing about, you know, being in the arts, I think everybody gets their shot eventually.
Yeah, they do.
And I think with sheer persistence, you're going to get your opportunities. And I think that's just like the school of hard knocks, right? Because there's so many people just trying to get in there. So many people trying to get it, but it's not. It's only for those who really are built for that journey. And I think your brother right now is getting the fruits of his labor, what he's been toiling over the past 20 years and everything like that.
I mean, you definitely have to have a thick skin. And it's one of those things where it's like, I guess with any industry, you can't expect overnight success. Like, I'll have people tell me, like, oh, my God, you're doing all this and that. I'm like, yeah, but I started doing this, like, in internships when I was 18. So literally 25 years ago. It's like, it looks as though it's an overnight success. But trust me, there have been many, you know, meltdowns that I've had thinking, oh, am I on the right path? Should I be doing this? But you definitely have to be persistent, because the way I see it is, when you get these opportunities, it's a universe responding to you in a favorable way. Yeah. So it's like you would get all these barriers and hurdles in your way if you weren't going in the right direction. So,
and those hurdles they actually make you better.
Absolutely.
Because it forces you to elevate your game.
Absolutely.
To study harder, to take more classes. There's a crazy clip I saw on YouTube. Denzel Washington, till this date, still takes acting classes.
Does he?
Yeah.
Oh, see, I love that.
This is Denzel Washington.
Oscar winner,
legendary actor, like, has been a heartthrob for, like, mostly, like, all our moms in here.
Yeah, my mom, that's her go-to.
Even till today, like, Denzel is an older man right now, but he's still like, oh my God, it's Denzel, right? He still takes acting lessons just to stay sharp in his craft.
Which I love, because you would think someone of his stature, you know, you need to brush up on what you're doing, but, like, you wouldn't think that he was still going and taking these classes and still training. But I mean, that's why he's at the top of his game. He's
always, as I call it in sales, I call sharpen the saw.
Yeah.
Even if you're still closing deals, you still got to sharpen your saw, you got to sharpen your pitch and everything. I want to get into Big Dreamers.
Yes.
And how this evolved into really, you know, teaching young kids about Black history. What did you notice within personally in your experience, like, what did you notice that, you know what, there needs to be a change within this system that we all have been living in, the Canadian system, where Black history, it always seems like it's shared with American history, right? And we never really get to learn about Black Canadian history. I mean, growing up here in Toronto, sometimes Black history will be like the Martin Luther King. It's just, it gets really, really repetitive, but we never share stories of, like, contributions done by Canadians. Yeah. So I want to ask you, like, what did you notice that got you down this path that made you act, you know, I'm going to make a difference and actually change the conversation?
So it's actually through my organization, Overture with the Arts, that led me to start doing, you know, some thinking and some, I guess, research on Canadian Black history. So by going into schools and talking to teachers and youth, I remember when we first launched, because one of Overture with the Arts' most popular programs is our Black History Month school tour. And essentially what that is my twin brother, he is the host of it. So he'll go into schools, deliver a presentation, which we call edutainment. So it's educational and entertaining. So he will create a presentation that fuses spoken word and music as well as history lessons to really keep kids engaged and get them excited to learn about Canadian Black history. So I remember the first year we launched the tour was in 2011. At the time, we were working with a different artist, but just by talking to educators, I asked them, like, so what are you guys doing for Black History Month? And oftentimes the answer was like nothing. Or as you said, their teachers would be like, oh, well, we're, talking about Martin Luther King Jr.
They're regurgitating the same things. And I'm
exactly.
like, I already, just leave it. You know what I'm saying? Exactly. I don't need to hear it again.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's like, it was always like, the regular heavy hitters in the States. Rosa Parks, MLK, talking about the civil rights movement, all like history changing, and obviously it helped change the landscape of things in Canada as well. But we have our own Rosa Parks. We've got Viola Desmond, we have Jean Augustine, we have Stanley G. Grizzle, and these stories aren't being shared. So by doing these presentations with my brother over time, again, a light bulb went off in my head, and I was like, wait a second. I was like, there aren't enough resources out there about Canadian Black history. My brother and I have been working on these presentations for years. I've got a wealth of knowledge about it. Why don't I create that resource? So basically, I just took the knowledge that I had, did some more research, and decided to write a book. Again, had no experience in the publishing industry, but just like with Overture with the Arts, I had no experience in nonprofit and charity, but I was like, I'm up for the challenge. I'll figure this out. So what's really great is when my book came out, so my first book, Big Dreamers, the Canadian Black History Activity Book for Kids, Volume 1, that came out in 2018. So at that point, I had already been doing so much through my nonprofit organization and doing workshops actually in chapters in the West Island. So all of the staff and the management at a bookstore, one of the biggest books chains in Canada, were familiar with me, were familiar with my work. So when I contacted the manager, I was like, oh, by the way, like I had this book, like would you be interested in carrying it in the store? She was like, absolutely. So I brought in 5 copies, the first, I think, it was maybe the first or second week in October, I don't remember. And then I kid you not, the next day she's like, so your book sold out? And I know in the grand scheme of things, 5 copies is not a lot, but I'm a tiny local author, and Indigo has thousands of books. So for it to sell out in one day, and it's about Canadian Black history, I was like, oh, okay. So then I did the book launch, and then that, from that, things just continued to snowball and snowball. And then because I had those relationships with the schools were like, wait, what? You have this book? We need to buy copies. So from the work that I was doing through Overture with the Arts and from the relationships that I built with Indigo in the schools, that just helped bring my company to the next level really quickly.
And I want to get deeper in that book because it is a coloring book.
Yes.
Right? So kids can consume the knowledge.
Yes. They
can also color the photos just to make it more interactive.
Exactly.
To get in the context of that book, who are they studying that they don't already know about?
Yes, so Big Dreamers Volume 1, because I've now gone on to do a second volume as well. The first one, the concept is an alphabet of 26 different people. So as you mentioned, it's a coloring book. So each letter of the alphabet has a different person featured in the book. You could read at the bottom of the page, which has a little blurb that's about 150 words about each person. Then you could color in each page. But for example, letter A is for Ann Cools. So Ann Cools was the first Black senator in Canada, male or female, and the first Black female senator in all of North America. So they're learning about phenomenal people like Ann Cools, Stanley G. Grizzle, Willie O'Ree, the first Black NHL player to ever play. They're also learning about Yolande James, who's from Quebec. She's the first Black female M&A and the youngest. There are just so many phenomenal stories that are included in this book that people don't know about. Like, we're always celebrating, our neighbors in the States, but we're not celebrating people who literally changed the game for Black Canadians here in our own country.
So in your opinion, who is one Black Canadian that's had a massive impact on just Blackness in Canada that we rarely ever speak about, or we are not even aware of them? Like, who is that to you?
Actually, to me, and this is by far one of my favorite stories in my book, the first one more specifically, is Gloria Bayliss.
Gloria Bayliss.
So people, I don't understand why they don't talk about her story more, but her story has inspired me so much. So in 1944, I don't remember the exact year, but anyhow, in the 1940s, she was a nurse. She'd immigrated here from Barbados, and she applied for a job at the Queen Elizabeth Hotel to be a nurse. Then she finds out from the staff, like, oh, no, the position's been filled. Sorry, you can't apply. Then her white friend the next day went and applied and got an interview. So her friend's like, oh, so how'd your interview go? And Gloria's like, what are you talking about? They told me the position was filled. And then she's like, well, I just went for an interview today. So anyhow, Gloria's like, oh, really? Is that interesting? That's great to know. So in the 40s, a Black woman was like, nah, that's not okay. Actually, I'm lying. It's not the 40s. It was like the 50s or 60s. Sorry about that. So Gloria basically was like, no, that's not okay. Like, I'm not going to, like, put up with this racism. So she took the case to court, and she fought for 12 years to basically prove that she was discriminated against based off of her skin color. And employment discrimination wasn't a thing back then. But because of Gloria, laws changed across Canada, which now mean that you cannot discriminate against a person because their color of the skin. And on top of that, so she changed the laws here in Canada. She then went on and became a successful entrepreneur.
Wow.
So for a black female to be an entrepreneur back then is just, you know, so rare. But like, her company is now led by her, I think 2 of her children. The company's worth over $1 billion. Like, it's just a phenomenal story. A lot of people don't know about it. And it's just one of those stories that needs to be shared with the masses. And it's like, her story has inspired me so much. And I just think more people need to know about her work.
Yeah. And what business is her family in?
They're in medical devices.
Medical devices.
Yeah. I think the business was started in the 80s or something like that. And then I know recently, about a year ago, the company was sold for like over $1 billion US.
Jeez.
Yeah, and this is a black woman who started that company, you know, decades ago.
Talk about generational wealth.
Yeah, exactly.
That's huge. That's huge.
Yeah, it is.
And you know, the thing is, like, there's so much black inventions and entrepreneurs, and you know, we've contributed so much that we rarely ever get spoken about. I was, you know, funny enough, I was watching like a Dr. Umar Johnson on the Breakfast Club.
Okay.
He was talking about how we've invented the street lights. We've invented certain instruments that we use every single day. Like, these are black inventions, but we never get the credit for it. You know, it's so unfair. And going back to the Canadian history, why do you feel Canada has a hard time accepting its own black history? It seems like it's just always the natives and everything like that. But, and of course, with all due respect to them, they were the native people on the land. Yeah. But black history, though, just seems to be swept under the rug.
Well, that's exactly what it is, because it's been swept under the rug for so long, and Canada presents itself as this inclusive country, that, you know, is void of all racism. People, for some reason, a lot of people are like, oh, there's no racism here in Canada. It's only in the States.
This culture of niceness we have that, like, Canada cannot do any harm. But exactly. It's vicious. Let's be real.
Well, that's the thing. And also, it hasn't been in the history books for so long. So to my understanding, in the Quebec history books for high school, I think there's maybe 1 or 2 paragraphs about Canadian black history in the entire book that's hundreds of pages. Wow. So it's not being taught in schools. So that's why people don't know about it. When I look back to my experience when I was in high school, so black history was officially recognized in Canada in 1995, and then the first Black History Month was 1996. And I remember I was in grade 10. We did nothing. Then the following year, we talked about Martin Luther King and the Civil Rights Movement, and then we read To Kill a Mockingbird. Nothing about Canadian black history. I mean, I was always learning about it at home with my parents. As a kid, we had books about, you know, the Underground Railroad and Harriet Tubman. So this was not new to me, but when I would go to school, it just wasn't included in the curriculum. So when kids aren't learning about it, they're obviously not going to think about it as they get older, because it's not something that was already in their mind. So I know schools are trying to make changes now, taking baby steps, but at least they're taking steps in the right direction now.
You know, when you say 1996, that's like 26 years ago. Yeah. And it's so frustrating because with Canada having like its long history since we gained independence, and then only establishing black, I mean, that's in my lifetime. Black history in Canada, only 1996.
I know.
It's frustrating to hear that, because those that you can go 90s, 80s, I mean, civilization has moved on, and we're still not acknowledging it in Canada, like a North American country. Yeah, it's sad to hear that.
And what's even more frustrating is when black history is taught, oftentimes the main focus is on slavery. But it's like, yeah, slavery was a big thing. However, we need to celebrate all of our wins. Yeah, we need to talk about these people who inspired us and who have changed history in Canada, who allowed kids to basically be in the same classroom no matter what skin color they are. So it just bothers me that, you know, they're focusing on the negative, and yes, it does need to be taught, but we also need to focus on the positive as well.
Yeah, it goes with this whole trend with slavery movies even till today, right? Like, do we need like another slavery movie? Do we need another painful remembrance of past events?
Well, that's the thing. It's so triggering. So it's like, yes, we do need to share history, because history can become cyclical, but we also need to focus and put a spotlight on, phenomenal trailblazers.
Yeah, absolutely. And since launching Big Dreamers, how many books have you sold so far?
Yeah, so it's been a blessing. So Volume 1 at this point has sold over about 7,000 copies. Volume 2 is probably about 5,000 copies. I also have a book called Movers, Shakers, History Makers, a Canadian Black history book of rhymes, and that's my first fully illustrated full color book, and that one has probably sold about 5,000 as well. Jeez. So it has been absolutely beautiful. And
which main distribution channels are you selling through?
Yeah, so I do B2B, I do B2C. So B2B actually just started this past year in January, because I'm now represented by a sales agency. So they contacted me, so I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, like, this is refreshing.
Yeah, because if they're contacting you, it's because they know they're going to make money from you.
Yeah, they know you're hot. They know you're hot in these streets.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely, yeah.
So the sales agency has been a game changer, because now my books are in Indigos all across Canada, and also smaller like mom and pop shops and other retailers, so that's been incredible. But I mean, there's also a third lane, which I call B2S, which is business to schools, because I sell directly to schools as well. Yeah, so it's been, I guess I have 3 different sales channels.
Amazing. And, with 7,000, 5,000 copies, I mean, it's only going up. What impact have you heard from parents that your book has had on their children?
Yeah, so honestly, like, there have been many moments where I'm just, like, crying tears of joy, because parents will say, like, my kids finally feel seen, and also while my kids are doing these activities, I do it with them, and I'm also learning. I'll have parents like in their 50s who are like, I didn't know about these amazing people that are part of Canadian Black history. Yeah. So, I mean, it's really encouraging to hear parents say that, and it's encouraging when kids are like, this is my favorite book, and it's like, oh my God. Yeah. So it's been really rewarding, I should say. Representation
matters a lot. There's one story I heard you talk about where there was like a hockey player, a girl, just dominating her league with other boys, and she was a Black girl.
Yeah, Angela James.
Yeah, can you share this story with us?
Yeah, so I'll tell you briefly, because I don't remember all the details, but she's basically the Wayne Gretzky of female hockey, and this is a Black woman. So, like, from the young age when she was in elementary school, she was so good that, like, she would dominate leagues that were, like, for boys. She was a young girl. She's won so many awards. She's been to the Olympics. She's just a force to be reckoned with, and so many people don't know about her. I mean, she's changed the game of female hockey, and people are like, who's she? But then Wayne Gretzky, who's a multi-millionaire, is celebrated every single day, gets all this praise, and then this woman who's done just as much, if not more, is just, her story's not, not celebrated the same way.
Yeah, it's unfortunate how things are.
It is.
When, you're passionate about also empowering, like, more Black businesses.
Absolutely.
This is something that you speak about a lot. With the way our spending power is and the way the infrastructure we have right now to support Black businesses, what do you think we need to be doing to expedite that process where we can actually start spending our dollar with each other?
Well, that's the thing. Like, the first thing is recirculating the dollar within our community. Because oftentimes, like, people go to a Walmart to buy something as opposed to, like, a Caribbean boutique to buy the same thing. So it's like, if females want to go buy whatever, or even males want to go buy cocoa butter, fine, it's $1 cheaper at Walmart, but they're, a $1 billion corporation. I would rather support a small Caribbean business that's selling it for 50 cents to $1 more, because at least I know that my dollar is supporting someone within my community. So people just have to shift their mind frame and really start supporting Black-owned businesses. Because if they want to have their own opportunities as well, we need to continue to uplift these businesses that already exist.
Yeah, and there's a lot of great initiatives that we're doing within the community.
Yeah.
We'll have our own events where, you know, Black businesses can set up like their own stands. Are there any ideas that you see that you think about, man, if this was implemented like this, we can actually start seeing more Black not just like businesses, but more people taking an interest in Black entrepreneurship?
Well, I've noticed, for example, in Toronto, they've got like more like Black-owned boutiques. Like, there's a store in the Eaton Center, or was a store. It's now in the Scarborough Town Center. It's called Black-owned Toronto. And I just remember when I heard about that store, my products were included in that store, like people were just celebrating this win for our community.
Yeah.
And there's other businesses that are similar to that in Ontario, but we don't have that here in Quebec. And I feel like if we had these type of brick and mortar businesses here in Quebec, people would be more inclined to actually shop and support Black owned. But I find a lot of, Black owned businesses currently are e-commerce businesses. That's my opinion. I don't know this for a fact, but like, yes, there are some, boutiques that are Black owned, but I think we just need more brick and mortar locations that are Black owned here in Montreal specifically.
Yeah, when you look at the infrastructure of Black businesses, right?
Yeah.
Of course, we can have the e-commerce stores, but it's more about setting up the infrastructure to own the buildings, to give more Black-owned businesses, hey, we own this block. This is our block. You set up your store here. You can set up your barbershop, your salon, your food. You know what I mean? Like, it's one thing, because once we have a domination of a certain area, it's easy to keep that dollar circulating because you're not even leaving the radius of where you're at.
Absolutely.
So it feels like everything is scattered. And even though we can have, let's say this whole circle is Montreal entrepreneurs, but we need to have like a focal, powerful point, the way Chinatown has it, the way Greektown has it.
Yeah, well, we used to. I mean, Little Burgundy used to be a thriving Black community like decades ago, but because the government is racist, they literally put the expressway right through Little Burgundy and basically like tore it down. So, I mean, it used to be thriving. It still is there, but also with gentrification, so many areas of Little Burgundy are now, they no longer exist. So if we could rebuild on that, I think that would be a huge starting point, because it would be really great, like you said, to have areas like Chinatown and, there's the Greek community that has their own areas as well. We definitely need to see that revamped here in Montreal.
Yeah. I think it starts with actually having the representation in the office and decision making. Like when they're deciding, let's move this Little Burgundy area out. We don't see a need for it. There needs to be someone like, stop. This is actually a community, the same way we have these other communities from these backgrounds. They have their spaces. We need to honor this, but it takes also getting in that space it's a lot of, it's very bureaucratic.
It's systemic racism, essentially.
Yeah, systemic racism. Let's just call it spade a spade.
That's literally what it is, because there's not representation on the municipal, provincial, and federal level by a large population of the Black community. Those decisions aren't being made by us, unfortunately. So a lot of people don't see the importance of keeping these communities because it doesn't represent their needs and it doesn't represent their community. So, I mean, I think another important thing is really getting more Black people into politics who will, have that decision-making power that is going to help benefit us and help us grow our community to what it once was.
Yeah, 100%. And, on a positive note, though, like there has been a surge of Black women entrepreneurs over the past, I give or take 10 years. Like I think out of like every 3 businesses, one is like owned by a Black woman, right? In your opinion, what has caused this surge of entrepreneurship amongst Black women?
I don't know what caused the surge,
but you've definitely felt it though, right? There's been like this meteoric rise.
There's been a shift.
There's been a shift in thinking, and it's beautiful to see. So you're someone who's successful with Big Dreamers, Overture, and everything. You're in it, so you're amongst other women who are your contemporaries. What has shifted in attitude that has made this happen?
I think it's attitude and also funding opportunities. I mean, for far too long, funding wasn't available to the Black community, male or female. But now, I mean, we saw a shift really summer of 2020 when, unfortunately, George Floyd was murdered. So there was this, global uprising in support of like the Black Lives Matter movement and the Black community in general. So at that point, all these businesses decided to jump on the woke wagon and like, oh, we support the Black community, and put out these ridiculous statements. But because of that, then people were injecting money into Black-owned businesses. But I guess females took the opportunity to take advantage of these funding opportunities, so maybe that's where the shift came into play. But I don't know. But there definitely are a lot more Black female-owned businesses around, I've noticed too.
Yeah, it's great to see. And you brought up an interesting part about all these businesses supporting Black. Support, right? And it feels like that support is so short-lived because it's only until like when a traumatic event happens that they actually, oh yeah, like someone got shot. Okay, let's start a fund. Let's start a
but it's
resource.
like, oh, so slavery wasn't traumatic enough?
Yeah.
Like we needed to see someone on camera being murdered.
Murdered.
We've been telling you this for centuries. So this is nothing new to us. I think because everything is now being documented, people are just horrified to actually see it live happening. But like this has been happening for so long. This is nothing new to our community.
Yeah, you know, it's so crappy that it comes in waves.
I know.
You know what I'm saying? Because if you're going to give these opportunities, make them permanent.
Yeah.
Don't just get on your soapbox when something happens and you're like, okay, we're doing this for black women, for whatever lower income students in the black community. Yeah. And then soon as time passes, it's like, oh, you know, it's actually funny. I bring this story up because I'm a podcaster too. And, you know, we create a lot of content. And there's this one company we wanted to work with. And, you know, this was the height of the whole George Floyd trauma. So they were working with us the entire time. Like, okay, you said you'll give us funding for these certain initiatives, like for equipment and recording space and everything like that. Conversations were hot. Were going along. Things were looking fruitful. But then soon as the news started dying down, it's like, oh, like I got to hit up this decision maker. Oh, I got to do this. Oh, I got to do that, right? So when there's less pressure, there's a lot more like, hey, let's actually recoil back here and just kind of ghost them. And nothing ever happened. Yeah. Right? So I feel like now if something, and I don't want this to happen and use as a way to get back in the door. Right. But it happens like clockwork all the time. Like
it does.
Something happens and, oh, yeah, here's all the money. Here's all the resources. Here's all the mentoring. I'm like, we've seen it all. Like, you know, stop pump faking us.
But I mean, think about it. Like in the 90s, we had Rodney King, who's beaten on camera. There were some small steps in the right direction. Then 2020, you know, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery. Like that summer was intense. So it's like...
Plus the pandemic too.
Exactly. So everyone was home. So all eyes were just glued to the news. So it's like, I guess the one good thing I should say is... Because this happened and all these companies, you know, pledged to give a certain amount to black-owned businesses in the black community, these are like 3 to 5 year, you know, funding opportunities that, you know, they're not going to expire until about 2025. So hopefully when they see the impact that, you know, the black dollar has had on the economy, they're going to renew these funding opportunities.
Absolutely.
That's my hope.
Absolutely, yeah. And also, too, like for the funding part of it, as more black women are raising money, there needs to be more opportunities for them to raise a second round of funding. Absolutely. You ever notice that? Like, you can easily get an angel investment, but to do like a Series A, especially for women in tech too, they call it the valley of death, right?
Well, I've never had to raise funding. I've been bootstrapping it on my own. I've never received any grants or business loans. So I've never actually had to try and get any angel investors, but I have heard that it's a nightmare.
Yeah, and it gets even deeper than that because it's like now relationship based. Like, who do you know within institutions that you can actually raise? You know, there's always money for angel investing, right? So it goes a lot deeper. But also got to give credit to people like Wes Hall in Toronto.
Okay, yeah.
Black North, he's doing like a lot of great things, a lot of great initiatives to have other businesses pledge towards like hiring. And
yes, because that happened in 2020 to sign the Black North, or was it the Black North Initiative? I don't remember.
Yeah, Black North Initiatives, exactly.
Yes. So I remember dozens of companies signed that, saying that we commit to increasing like our
25%.
Yeah, some nonsense like that. But I'm like, but are you actually doing it? What he's doing is incredible.
It's amazing.
There's no shade towards him at all. Like, he's an inspiration.
Yeah.
But these companies, it's like, yeah, but that's just performative lip service. Like,
performative. And they say they're gonna add like a C-suite or a director. It's like chief diversity officer.
Oh God! Every time I see that, I just laugh. So I'm like, oh please.
I'm like, really, chief diversity officer?
It's like, for what? Like, what are they actually doing though?
Yeah, like what work is involved with that?
Nothing. Yeah. It's just literally they're the poster boy for that company saying we support like BIPOC owned. No, you don't.
Yeah, it's foolery that goes on.
Yep.
As we look back into your business, you know, Big Dreamers Overture. What are some things that you're looking forward to 2023 that you can speak about on right now?
Yeah, so 2023 is going to be, I guess, more growth. I have a new book coming out. I have more products coming out. I'm hoping that I'm currently working on a TV series, so hopefully that'll get picked up. So yeah, just more content. And I guess like just expanding in the multimedia world, because right now it's publishing, but I also have a YouTube channel, so I want to focus more on my YouTube channel. Maybe I'll start a podcast, and then with a TV show that I'm working on. So I just really want to focus like more on the entertainment industry and all the different aspects of it.
Yeah, well, you're already on your way there.
Trying.
You've got the juice right now. You've got the momentum, so it's definitely going to keep going. As we work towards wrapping up, like where can people find you?
Yeah, so they can find me through my website, bigdreamers.ca. On social media, my handles are bigdreamersca or Akilah Newton, ANP.
Amazing. Akilah, thank you for joining us on the show today. That was a great podcast. You dropped a lot of gems on your book, your not-for-profit, and the arts. And it was a treat having this conversation.
This was honestly my pleasure. It was really great chatting with you, and thank you for the opportunity.
Likewise. Well, everybody, thanks for tuning in to the Other Canada podcast. I'm your host, Owen Osende, and we'll see you in the next episode. Peace out.